episode of Black Excellist, we will be covering the following 4 topics as we hope to give you more context and background around reparations. In Section 1, we will cover the limited number of cities and states who are having serious discussions around reparations. In Section 2, we will cover the creative ways that they are calculating reparations owed to Black Americans. In Section 3, we will show you how to use the California Reparations Calculator with real live data. And in the last section, we will cover how you can potentially qualify for a reparations package. Bear in mind that this is a hypothetical use case for calculating and qualifying for reparations. At the time of this video, there have been only a dozen cities who have even taken up this subject. The idea of atoning for the sins of slavery has been around since 1865. After the Civil War, Union leaders concluded that each Black family should receive 40 acres, and some families were to receive mules left over from the war. President Andrew Johnson, however, reversed the order and returned the land back to former slave owners. Without question, reparation packages for Black Americans should be designed, legalized, and distributed at the federal level. The United States Congress has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting effects. There is a $14 trillion bill on the table, but many doubt that it will ever see the light of day. But some cities and local municipalities are taking it upon themselves to apologize for slavery. Some cities and local municipalities are being proactive and progressive, making amends for both the local and federal government's role in denying wealth-building opportunities for Black people. And yet, there are other cities who are forming committees and task forces to determine how a reparations program can be funded and implemented. Here are 3 governments that are pioneering paths and making significant progress in providing reparation packages to their Black citizens. We want to spend a little time describing their proposals, since these are likely to become national models that your city or state could adopt. Number 1, the state of California. The state of California is taking some very bold steps. They have formed the first state-appointed task force in the nation to explore how a state could make reparations to African Americans hurt by slavery. And they have even gone as far as to design an online calculator to help determine what a reparation payout would look like. Number 2, the city of Evanston, Illinois. The city of Evanston, Illinois has already approved their reparations program. However, they are less focused on slavery and want to help reverse some of the damage caused by discriminatory housing policies and practices. Their program is believed to be the first of its kind in the U.S. and is a potential national model to help Black Americans build wealth through home ownership. Number 3, the city of San Francisco. San Francisco supervisors have backed the idea of paying reparations to its Black citizens in lump sum payments of $5 million. But it's just a proposal for now with a list of qualifications where you must meet 2 of the 8 criteria to be eligible. But first, let's discuss how reparations are calculated. If your city or state follows the framework of the California Reparations Task Force, you may be provided with an online calculator to help you estimate the amount of reparations that you qualify for. This calculator uses certain criteria to determine the amount that you have lost due to generations and decades of systemic racism. Here are the 5 criteria that California is factoring in. Health harm. This is derived from the difference in life expectancy between Black and white residents. For example, in California, whites live 7.6 years longer than Blacks, and therefore, this loss of time will be compensated for. Mass incarceration and over-policing. This is derived from average salary for a state employee because incarcerated individuals were forced to provide unpaid labor for the state, plus loss of freedom compensation. The time frame corresponds to the national war on drugs. Housing discrimination. This is derived from the homeownership wealth gap from state-facilitated discriminatory redlining, unfair zoning, and prejudicial home lending practices. Devaluation of businesses. This is estimated from missed opportunities and wealth built through Black business establishments and the potential business profits. Unjust property takings. The task force highlighted several instances of eminent domain and unjust taking, but at the time of this video, the task force was not provided enough data to provide a specific calculation. But let's play with the numbers. Let's pretend that you do actually live in California and you live there for a minimum of 6 months of each year, from 1950 to 2020. After entering the years of eligibility, notice that the reparations calculator automatically quantifies the amount of monetary damage that is due to you. So here is the final sum that would be owed to you per the California formula. It's a grand total of $1,381,198. That's nothing to sneeze at. Now let's see how much you would qualify for if you were born in 1970, 1980, and 1990 respectively. Again, we want to remind you that this could be your package if your city or state adopts the reparations proposal that's before California. After watching the rest of this video, pull up the calculator and enter the values for you and your family members using the link in the description box below. But we may be putting the cart before the horse. Do you actually qualify for reparations? It really depends. But let's go through the 10 potential qualification points that we extracted from the reparation plans developed by California, San Francisco, and Evanston. Number 1, you must be a descendant of an enslaved African American. Only those individuals who are the descendants of enslaved African Americans can be eligible for monetary reparations. You will have to prove that you are in the lineage of someone who was enslaved through U.S. chattel slavery before 1865. Senior citizens will be given priority, and recent Black immigrants do not qualify. This is a requirement established by the California's Reparations Task Force for the California Reparations Program. If your city or state adopts their framework, then they will establish a new African American Freedmen Affairs agency dedicated to not only implementing the reparation program, but also properly carrying out any policies adopted into law. This new agency would also carry the legal responsibility of helping applicants determine their eligibility. The agency would have a genealogy branch to support potential reparations applicants by providing access to expert genealogical research to confirm reparations eligibility. Number 2, you must be a descendant of a free African American living prior to 1900. If you are not the descendant of an enslaved Black American, you can also be eligible for reparations if you can prove that you are the descendant of a free African American who was living in the United States prior to 1900. This is an exception that was adopted by the California Reparation Task Force. Number 3, you must be at least 18 years old. If your city or state adopts the framework established by San Francisco, California, then in order to receive reparations, you must not only be African American, a descendant of an enslaved person, but you must be at least 18 years old. There must exist public documents where you have identified as either Black or African American for at least 10 years. Number 4, you must prove residency for at least 13 years. If your city or state adopts the reparations framework adopted by San Francisco, then you would have to be born in the city or state or have migrated there between 1940 and 1996. If this holds true, then you will have to show proof of at least 13 years of residency. Number 5, you must prove economic or health inequities. If your city or state adopts the reparations framework proposed by San Francisco, you could receive reparations if you can prove that your race is a factor in you not earning the average income or wealth threshold for your city or state. Also, if you can demonstrate that you lack access or proximity to quality educational opportunities, you may become eligible. And lastly, your city or state may target reparations for Black citizens who lived in specific zip codes, regions, or communities that have historically experienced particularly intense discrimination or violence. Number 6, you were incarcerated by the failed war on drugs. If you were arrested and incarcerated during the 1980s as part of the Reagan administration's failed war on drugs, then you are eligible for reparations. And if you are a direct descendant of someone who was incarcerated, you would be eligible for reparations if your city or state is using San Francisco's reparation program as a framework. 7, your family was displaced or land seized by the government. If your city or state were to follow the San Francisco framework, thousands of Black families would receive reparations if they lost their homes, land, farms, and businesses due to the local and federal government claiming their property under the power of eminent domain. You would also qualify if your family suffered from environmental injustices after corporations moved their refineries, landfills, and power plants in close proximity of Black neighborhoods, bringing in contaminated water, toxic chemicals, and air pollution. San Francisco also recognizes the structural racism where the local municipalities deliberately built interstates and highways that ran through the middle of thriving Black enclaves and business centers. The ripple effects damaged every aspect of Black lives: cultural, economic, environmental, political, and educational for generations. Your city or state, like San Francisco, may seek to compensate any family that suffered damage to their pathway to build generational wealth, secure stable housing, and live freely and healthy. Number 8. You experienced lending discrimination or was a victim of redlining. If your city or state were to follow the San Francisco framework, you would be entitled to reparations if you personally experienced lending discrimination between the years 1937 and 1968, or if you were a resident of a formerly redlined community between 1968 and 2008. Your city would officially identify the formerly redlined community to help you determine your eligibility. And for those who do not know and others who may need a refresher, redlining is a term for racial discrimination of any kind in housing. But specifically, redlining involves government maps that outlined areas where Black residents lived and were therefore deemed risky investments. These maps were also used by real estate agents, banks, and financial institutions to steer potential Black home buyers into these neighborhoods and deny loans for Black buyers who were looking to buy homes outside of these areas, in predominantly white neighborhoods. Number 9. Prove residency in your city between 1919 and 1969, or be a direct descendant. If your city or state adopts the framework established by Evanston, Illinois, it is possible that you would qualify for some form of reparations due to the harmful housing discrimination practices that African Americans suffered through. Adult residents who have lived in Evanston before 1969, when housing discrimination in various forms was at its height, are eligible for Evanston's reparation program. Evanston will pay out $25,000 to African Americans and their descendants who were affected by housing discrimination policies, prejudicial city zoning ordinances, and unfair redlining. Number 10. Any Black person affected by systemic racism. Other cities such as Boston are considering extending reparations to all of their Black citizens. There is a growing argument that the legacy of the slave trade has affected the lives of every Black person in America, no matter when their ancestors arrived. Some reparation committees are giving consideration to a point system, where descendants of enslaved ancestors are given more points in the formula to determine eligibility, or they would be given a bigger reparation package than a first or second generation Black immigrant. We appreciate the fact that you stayed until the end. Thank you for spending time with us, and don't forget to like this video. Also, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss a video. Bye for now. We will see you tomorrow.